All right, so that moves us on to 1.4 and 1.5, powers, exponents, and square roots. Just to kind of go over this again, if you have a number like 3 squared, what that actually means is 3 times 3. This is your base, that 3. Your exponent is the 2, and that tells you how many 3's you're going to multiply. So 3 times 3 is 9. A common mistake on this, people want to just say, they'll just take the 3 times the 2 and get 6, but really we just have to remember we're going to multiply a bunch of 3's and we're going to see how many we have. The next example, you can raise a fraction to an exponent, 2/3 to the third power. Just think about it like you're multiplying how many of those 2/3? Well, the third power means 3 of them. And because it's multiplication, you can just multiply straight across on the top. You have your 2 times 2 times 2, which gives you 8, over the 3 times 3 times 3, which is 27. Alright, so this next one, here's where I just want to make sure we talk about these two examples. They look the same, -2 to the fourth and -2 to the fourth. The only difference is one has parentheses and one does not. Let me talk about the one with parentheses first. If you notice this -2 to the fourth, inside the parentheses, see how the negative is included within that set of parentheses? So that tells us that you're going to take a -2 and you're going to multiply 4 of them. So when you multiply, I'll just go left to right. -2 times -2 is 4. Times that -2 right there is a -8. Times this -2 is a +16. Seeing we got a positive answer. Now this -2 to the fourth over here, what happens is the way that this gets read in math, and it's going to seem a little backwards, is that negative is not included inside with the 2. It's not inside a set of parentheses to connect it. So what we actually do is first we do the 2 to the fourth. So 2 to the fourth is 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 times 2. And we get 16 when we do that. And that negative that we ignored actually gets tacked on to the end. And we end up with a -16 for this answer. So it's such a small detail that we just have to make sure we're being accurate about. If you type them into the calculator, one without parentheses, one with, this is what your calculator will show you. This first -2 to the fourth, when it, right here, another way to think about that is it's like a -1 times 2 to the fourth, because the negative wasn't inside parentheses with the 2. And if that's what we were asked to do, you would do your exponent first. 2 to the fourth is 16 times -1, which is -16. That's the technical mathy way of thinking about it. The other thing you could do is just do the exponent first and put the negative on your answer. Alright, so here's the last slide of our intro video. Just to kind of go over square roots really quickly. The square root of 49, that means that a number times itself equals 49. So you can kind of think about what they are. Hopefully you guys are coming up with 7 in your head, because 7 times 7 is 49. Square root of 36, 6 times 6 is 36, so the square root of 36 equals 6. Now these next two, do you see how this negative is outside of the square root? So what that tells us to do is first, let's take the square root of 25. Square root of 25 is 5. And then that negative just comes down. So that answer is actually a -5. This next one, I don't think I actually meant to have that negative right there. So let's pretend that's not there. So the difference with this next one is you have a square root, and if you notice the negative is inside or underneath the square root with the 25. So the thing with taking the square root of numbers, you cannot take the square root of a negative number. So you could write can't do, you could write no solution, you could write undefined. whatever. I mean, I'm not going to be picky about that. If you type that into your calculator, you would get the same thing. You'd get an error message. So you can't square root a negative number. When you're comparing, figuring out which of these is greater than, less than, or if they're equal to each other, I think the easiest thing to do is just type it in your calculator. What's the square root of 51? Well, actually, right now, I don't actually have a calculator on me, so if I were doing this in my head, I would say I don't know the square root of 51, but I do know the square root of 49. Square root of 49 is 7. So the square root of 51 is going to be kind of close to a 7. And is that greater than, less than, or equal to the 8? That's going to be less than the 8. You also could, another way to approach that is you could say 8 is equal to the square root of 64. Because square root of 64 is equal to 8. And then you could say, well, the square root of 51 is going to be less than the square root of 64. You just want to get those kind of into the same unit so that they're easy to compare. On this last one, a negative 4, I could think of that as a negative square root of 16, because the square root of 16 equals 4. Now, because they're negative, you want to remember on a number line, here's 0, all these negative numbers over here, they get smaller the further away you get. So even though 25 right here is bigger than a 16 because they're negative, it's actually going to be smaller. So a negative square root of 25 will be less than a negative square root of 16. You also could, on that one, because we know the square root of 25, you could say, oh, well, that's a negative 5 compared to the negative 4. That maybe would have been a more clear way. How does negative 5 compare to negative 4? Well, it's less than a negative 4. All right, and there is your intro video.